Welcome to DNF. This is a Formula One podcast. I am Spencer Hall, and that, look at the point, no look, is Jessica Smetana. How are we doing, Jessica?
And that, if you could see it, is Sam Hartman, because my dad has that in his office from last year's Notre Dame football preview. I'm doing well, Spencer. I kind of want to just talk about your escapades in Vegas for this whole show, but we'll get to some race stuff. But can we start with that? What have you been up to lately?
So I got to Vegas on Thursday and was there for many of the festivities. I'm going to start listing things, and you just stop me.
Okay. If I want like a follow up, perhaps.
Sure.
Okay.
Things that happened in Las Vegas. We did a show for ESPN where, as I was doing it, I realized that Ludacris was not only on stage doing pre-race warm-up, he was doing area codes, which has to be amazing for the European ear, not used to hearing the full version of area codes. There was a sushi bar in the middle of the paddock.
I want to hear more about that. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
I saw you post about the sushi bar. We'll put a photo of it on screen.
Yep.
Who was it for? Was it just for anyone walking through the paddock?
So you had to walk up, and there was a little tensa barrier, little tensa barrier around it, and you had to walk up and say, "Hi, I would like free fish." And they said, "Cool." And you had to go to a little waiting room, which was just to the side. So it was like another series of little tensa barrier, right? Roped off. So you sat there and waited until the one crew finished. They left. And then it was about 15-minute cycles, 4 courses of omakase. And they just sort of cycled you through. They didn't really care how many times you went through, by the way. So you could just kind of go out and go back in if you were killing time and had nothing to do.
What was your favorite bite?
There was a smoked eel.
Oh my God, that's my favorite.
Oh, Jessica, it was the business. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, I haven't had eel since I was like maybe 10 years old because my parents took me to a sushi restaurant and I had it, and a bone from the eel got stuck in my throat, and then I had to go to urgent care and they had to remove it with pliers. But still,
but
my
you're
favorite.
still like, I'd try it. That's how
I
good
would
it
try
is,
it.
right?
I would try it in this exact context. This would be the first time I have had eel in like 20 years because that sounds incredible. Holy shit.
I did not go back for seconds, by the way, because got busy, had to do stuff. However, one of my co-hosts, and I won't name exactly who, Dallin Cuff, he went back like a seal begging for bait. He went back multiple times. So
that's amazing. And also, Vegas is one of the few places where F1 could get away with this because you can't have sushi in the Miami paddock because it would be cooked. It would be cooked in seconds because it's so hot there.
That's right. To let everyone know, this is the coldest race of the year for F1. Like it was below 50. Tire conditions were squirrely. Max, before the race, said it felt like driving on ice, and everyone was wearing coats. Everyone was wearing big puffy coats, particularly people who did not really expect Vegas to be that cold, had to go ahead and hit the North Face store and get themselves a big old puffy jacket. So there were a lot of those. Additional Vegas things about this. One, it is the easiest race. It is so easy. Everything they do is now year 2, it's dialed in. There are no logistical snafus. There are no hiccups. Everything is just click, click, click. All the volunteers are on point. All of them know what they're talking about for the most part, which is an improvement over some races. You're in, you're out. Every little need, if you're on the press side, is completely taken care of. They even did something that was unusual this year, which was the media center was in a casino, Toscano, all right? Which, if you want to know what the boardroom in every mafia movie where they're like, we need to get the 5 families together, that's what the old media center is, okay? And they still use that for the big empty media center with all the screens, right? And like the data points and people just with their head down. But it was kind of a long walk, and just to give you an idea of like how badly Vegas wants to keep this race and the kind of lengths they're going to for the media, that traditionally no one cares about, Vegas built in a little mini media lounge in the paddock so that you didn't have to go all the way over there, right? And had, hey, they had the fancy tall Coke Zeros. What can I say? They listened and they adjusted for their market in every single respect. In addition to that, there were like actual general admission tickets that you could get last minute. So that was and not necessarily because of a lack of interest in the race, though there were some empty seats. It was because they reserved them. So for real, you can get into qualifying for $99.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, first of all, you were treated like a king.
I think everyone was. It's like full disclosure. People be like, "Oh, it's because you were there as media." Yeah, but I'm reporting my experience. It was extremely, and I think that experience is pretty much like across the board for spectators as well. Like it's very buttoned up.
That's great. It sounded like the attendance was maybe slightly less than last year, but still solid for the weekend. It was like over 300,000 spectators. Yep. Watching the race, it was sort of there were like some spots maybe Saturday where it was not super full, but was your experience that it was pretty crowded? A lot of people were out and about?
Yes, and I think they didn't manage to solve, I think, one issue with the race locally. Okay, locals absolutely hate the block traffic, and having a hot track for 4 or 5 hours on Las Vegas Boulevard, there's no getting around the inconvenience of that. There's no getting around the kind of local discontent that people are still feeling about having the one road. Because remember, Las Vegas, relatively new, not an old traffic layout. There's one way to get in, one way to get out if you're talking about the Strip, which is where a ton of people work. And that's always going to cause some friction. And I think a lot of locals still feel like that the Las Vegas city government, in coordination with F1, is very high-handed about, well, it's good for you, so deal with it. It's very hard to deal with. It can take, my driver told me it took him 3 hours to get from the airport to Fremont Street through traffic on Friday night.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it just like there are still some miserable traffic conditions that can happen because you're taking the main artery of town that isn't the interstate and you're shutting it down and running Formula One cars down it. So I think there's the locals' discontent stories are still real, I think, to some extent. You asked if there were people out and about. Yeah, there's a lot of people out and about, but they're primarily still, I think, in like the bulk of the casinos around the Strip. So, Wynn, Encore, Caesars, Venetian, Palazzo, like they sort of still circulate there. But there were some fees and other things that sort of were instituted to, I think, spread the wealth around a little bit. And I hope that worked. But on the whole, pretty crowded, pretty busy. Everybody, I don't want to say that they were blasé about it, but I think everyone was like, oh yeah, it's an F1 race. We got this. It's fine. So in year 2, surprisingly, the town, built on the hospitality industry, put on a very hospitable and well-managed race.
Wow. I saw a video that was going around social media of people going up and down escalators so that they could get a peek of the track. Did you see that in person?
Yeah, absolutely. I told somebody to do it because there were a couple.
I love that because you can't stop on the walkways, and that's for any F1 race. Like in Miami, the bridges that go over the track are blacked out, so people aren't just standing there watching from overhead. People have to like keep it moving. So that's the same in Vegas, but there's escalators, and if you're moving on the escalator, I guess they're like,
if you're moving on the escalator, the cops really can't stop you. Yeah. So there are people who are circulating just to kind of catch a glimpse, but there's a lot of people who really just want to see the cars. They just want, so if they'll come out for qualifying. They just want to see some vroom vroom, and they also happen to just be in town. There were people who came this weekend who had no idea there was a race. That's still true, and I know that because I was on the plane next to being 21 was awesome. Like, just don't ever let anybody tell you like, being 21 you're clueless, and you're like, it's great. Because there were 2 young men, I think they were 23 and 21, and they were next to me. Okay, one was next to me, one was across the aisle. They're brothers, and they're coming from Atlanta, and they were going to Vegas for like their first 21 and up trip. And they go, "So why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here for the Formula One race." And this kid goes, "Hold on, hey, there's a race in town, yo!"
I love that. Wow.
You're
great. Right. Being a 21-year-old dumbass was
incredible.
The best days of my life. I'm so glad that it seems like people had a good time. This brings me to a question that I've been pondering this past weekend, which is Vegas good? Like, is this a good race?
I can say definitively after this race, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay.
Wasn't as good a race as last year. And I
True.
think a lot of that had to do with George Russell's dominance. But it's the kind of track where you can make up space, where you can pass. There's still like ample passing, and it's fast, and the visuals are incredible. That didn't go away. Year
Yeah.
two, when you're sitting there and, you know, we're either in the paddock or the media center, and you're watching the different angles just cycling through, everything looks awesome. And in addition to that, it looks awesome and it's competitive. And I think it will continue to be competitive. You know, if not for George Russell running away with the race single-handedly, there was a lot of sort of interesting back and forth and movement throughout, you know, the top 10, top 15. So I really enjoyed this race. I like the setup. I like the way it looks. I like the behaviors and the different strategies that this track encourages. And honestly, I am still insist of the North American races, which is what I can speak to. I've only been to the I've only been to the American races in person, not even the North American ones. Of the three that we have, Vegas is the one that is, I think, the best sort of total spectacle. It's not the best racing experience. The best racing experience is still Austin, just because we've got the hill, Big Red's up there. You can look and see the whole thing. It is the racers track devoted exclusively to racing. But for spectacle, nothing tops Vegas, right? And that might be like Vegas already, to me, in terms of just visual spectacle. There's very few F1 tracks that can trump it, because every single angle looks like something out of Speed Racer.
I want two things one good thing and one like funny thing from Vegas that I do like. One, the trophies are sick. Like I think they're so cool. They look like the sort of like light up, you know, Rio sign with all the different colors, like feathers. Like it's a great trophy. It is so Vegas. Second thing, Spencer, were you able to witness the awkward ride to the podium after the race?
Yeah, because that was so we went to the Red Bull hospitality pavilion, because that was where you go if Max is going to win a championship, right?
Naturally.
Which and the Red Bull.
We'll get to that.
The Red Bull hospitality pavilion, by the way, is the place where you go. You remember that casino from The Last Jedi, right? Where the casino world. Okay,
I've never seen a Star Wars.
Decadence. Complete decadence. Like if you want to go, wow, this is what guillotines were invented for. The Red Bull Pavilion, right? So you're in there, and we did get to watch the awkward ride. Where
what did you think of it? What did you think of the awkward ride?
First of all, congratulations to George Russell for being so excited that he didn't have the sense to take the seat for the guy with long legs. That was because he was in the middle, I believe. If you look at that lineup. He's sitting in the middle, despite the fact that he is the tallest guy. And congratulations.
And Lewis was like...
Lewis is over here. Or no, Lewis is over here. And Carlos is like all bunched up over here. Carlos is great because he's a very handsome man. And the minute that he puts like a little knit cap on, he looks like a Muppet. He goes from like his overall sexiness just goes from like an 11 to like a 3, right? And he goes into adorable.
Cruel. But yeah, he has a great head of hair. I think that my hot take about the center seat in the back seat of the car, the person with the longest leg should sit there, because then they can sort of man spread each leg into a separate part of the seats next to them. That's what I would do if I were tall. I would just own the entire center back seat.
You would be a very inconsiderate tall person, so I'm glad nature intervened. We did see that. We did also get, you know, the up and close with Yuki, which was Yuki hitting the sign. Like when you're there, a lot of these things happen, and like you can almost trace the reaction in the garage, right? If you're hanging around the paddock to like, what the fuck are we doing? Oh God, yeah. So you do get a bit of that as well. It was, as a race, when you're figuring out, you know, the end game, the most exciting part was everyone getting very excited to watch Lewis like make it a race. You know, he lost traction and grip over the last 5 or 6 laps, and that really did it. But before that, he was gaining like nearly a second a lap in terms of catching up to George. So I wish he'd pulled it off. I wish it could have happened. It was still a wonderful race. And that fireworks barrage afterwards is like an artillery assault. I can't.
Oh, God.
They set off, because from like 4 or 5 different major casinos, they set off a whole rack of explosives, and it's so loud, and the fact that the hotels are spread out sort of creates like an amphitheater effect for when it's going off.
That is terrifying. I imagine if there's any dog anywhere near the Las Vegas Strip,
infuriated, all of them.
They're so upset.
Just a lot of trazodone, a lot of dog trazodone being handed out.
You're absolutely right about the spectacle. Like, the visuals from this race are so cool, and there's nothing like it. Like, if you think about all the other night street races, they are all pretty cool to watch. Like, they're all very, like, Singapore, I think is visually very cool.
It's the closest that we get to this,
but it's nothing like Vegas. Like, I don't know. I have like changed my mind about this race so much, because when it was introduced as like the third North American race, I think there was a lot of eye rolling. Like, do we really need A, another street circuit, B, another race in North America, C, a race with like, no history in a place where F1's never been before, and like what is going to be gotten rid of in its place, and all these reasons. And then the manhole cover thing happened last year, and the locals were pissed and are still pissed, and it seemed like it was just kind of going to be a train wreck and a terrible choice. But second year in a row, the race was good. A champion was crowned for the drivers' champion this year. And that was sort of like, not the afterthought, but like there was so much other cool stuff going on that it wasn't the only storyline, right? Like there was like Mercedes and Lewis qualifying drama, and then Ferrari boy drama, which we will get to, and Lando and McLaren just not having it this weekend, and then all this other stuff. Apparently, Spencer, I don't know if you were privy to this controversy, a pervasive scent of weed around the paddock that drivers were
I was
pissed about.
Literally in the middle of it, and they're right. They would have tested positive, because there was
the source of the weed
yes,
smell.
that's on camera. It was just it's legal. It's legal. What are you doing? No. No, they're right. That was not a joke. Like, that wasn't them being, extremely sensitive, high performance athletes barking at a minor distraction, Jessica. It was heavy. It was heavy, and it was real, because when you get a bunch of people in Vegas and a bunch of celebrities, some of them really like to go after it. And that's just a side effect of that. One other thing about this race, before we stop singing its praises and start going over the results in earnest, there's one other thing that I know Formula One adores about this event, and that is you can get a lot of sponsors in and out of the door in an organized fashion, show them a good time, and herd them around like happy cattle, because I saw that. I saw the Salesforce people. They have a little paddle, and there's like 40 or 50 of them, and their names all over the track as a sold ad for Formula One, and they come into the paddock, and they all get their free drink, and they all go, ooh, the track, and they take them through the pits, and they're all in. You can do that all day with all of your sponsors, and they're happy as clams, and the hotel is right there.
Do you mean like literally Salesforce, or
yeah?
Like,
no,
when
Salesforce.
You said the Salesforce people, it sounded like it could have been like a sort of generic name for all of
like
the...
a terrible Marvel like subclade of superhero. No, I mean Salesforce.com.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Like they were
That's
all
amazing.
they were all over the place, and like they looked like a little tourist cavalcade, right?
Nice.
But they're on a
Yes.
junket, and the junket runs in and out on time like clockwork, and that's something that when you have Formula One's headquarters in North America in Las Vegas, they love that opportunity. That's one thing that Liberty Media and F1 I know love about this race, because there's no logistical challenges to getting everyone as fat and happy as possible.
Speaking of fat and happy, was the sushi the best thing you ate, or did you get any good Vegas restaurant?
I gotta tell you, the
experiences?
sushi was hitting, especially because no food tastes better than when it's surprise food, right?
Yeah.
And you're hungry, and they
free
go,
surprise
"Hey,
food.
would you like to sit down at this beautiful, like artisanal Japanese table and have this like sushi chef from Denver give you this amazing omakase?" Yeah, no, that was the best thing I ate. Although I did finally get to go to Din Tai Fung. I hadn't been to Din Tai Fung, so I got some soup dumplings that were sublime. That was really good.
Fire. All right, should we talk about some of the race stuff? Where do you want to start? You want to start
George.
Okay,
George.
let's start with George.
100%.
Tell me about George.
This was like George's man race. That this was George's like big dog race where George, in qualifying, wanted to be last one out, gambled, got the team on board with that. Not only got them to buy in, but paid it off by getting pole, took pole, got out clean out of the start, and just dominated the race. Mercedes didn't even really understand why it was happening. That's on record, that they didn't really know why the car performed that well, which seems to be the best possible outcome for Mercedes. Don't question it. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But like in terms of pit strategy, in terms of lining up behind George, I know that it's 2024, but we are really sort of looking forward to what 2025 is going to be in a lot of respects. And I think this is a preview of that. George was dominant and was the primary concern and the shot caller for the team. He stayed calm. We didn't have any weird panicky George moments, right? Where he's, the tires are going. No, we didn't have any of that.
He just is wearing out all of his tires in the beginning of the stint. Yeah.
And I may be repeating myself, but this felt like the first time that he really sort of was about it and didn't act like he was about it. There was no trying to be the the alpha dog on the team. There was no I'm the eldest boy. There was none of that. This was his.
The Ringer F1 pod with Meg and Spanners was hypothesizing if the Mercedes performance is like a sort of weather related thing, given they've performed better at all of the races where it hasn't been 100 degrees. And so maybe there's something to that, and that could be what has also caught them by surprise, because they haven't made that connection yet, which is an interesting theory, because like if you think about like testing different parts and different power units and different things, obviously when we think about temperature, we're normally thinking about just tire wear, right? And like how quickly you're going to be wearing out your tires if it's super hot and they're a softer compound, etc. But it's interesting to consider like mechanical like functioning in 30 degrees or 40, whatever it was in Vegas. It was cold.
Yeah, it was like high
degrees.
40s. Yeah,
high 40. Okay, so it was, balmy by Chicago metrics, but yeah, by my Miami metrics, freezing. So that could be it, but either way, yeah, he had a great drive. I mean, he was phenomenal. Awesome. Do you think Lewis would have won this race had he done better in qualifying?
Yes. And that's the gift and the curse of being Lewis Hamilton, is that you finish second and you come from 10th to second and you have a phenomenal race, but you are experienced and smart enough and have a high enough standard to know that if you had not messed up during qualifying, you would have won with your pace. And Lewis very nearly made this a real race, but ran out of tire at the end. So he should feel that way. There was also a little hiccup with pit strategy that probably cost him some time down the stretch in the race itself. So he knows that. I hope he can be happy with that second, because one, nothing he can do to change it now, and two, it was astonishing driving. Like that's the driver of the day is Lewis Hamilton there, because he was so far back and did so well in a car that again was I think set up as well as any except his teammates for success, and managed to exploit it to the limit of what was possible given qualifying. It was so fun to watch. Like, it was great watching. I'd sort of forgotten that. This year you kind of forget about Lewis because the car has been so forgettable, but this was memorable. This was fun to watch.
Oh man, what a weekend for Mercedes. And then they got to shove him in the backseat of a car and drive him around. Where was the podium like in relation to stuff?
Podium's grandstands, that's like behind the paddock, but they took him over to the Bellagio, to the fountains, to talk to Terry Crews for some reason. It was very important that we all take everyone over to the Bellagio and have them talk with an American television and film star who used to play in the NFL, and then put them back in the Bentley for another awkward ride. Might want to work on that logistically. Since Vegas takes notes, and I know they're listening.
They are
might
listening.
Want to work on that.
Work on that. I mean, Miami does the same thing. They come to the paddock and then they get in those like little buggies and then they go to the other side of the stadium at Hard Rock to the Dan Marino statue where the podium is set up, and there's fans over there. And Max Verstappen's like, who is Dan Marino? And don't worry about it. He is from Pittsburgh. Never won a Super Bowl. Okay, I guess like we should segue into Max for a second, because he did win
Yes.
the Drivers' Championship, which we sort of expected and knew was going to happen this weekend. But he didn't really have to do much. He just had to finish ahead of Lando, which he did. The McLaren cars were sort of just like not a factor this weekend for whatever reason. I guess we could get into that if you want. But yeah, Max wins his 4th consecutive championship, and he did it with a more he did it more closely than any other than 2021, which obviously people put an asterisk next to, but he did win it, and he won this one too, and now 4 years in a row Max has done it,
and is now basically can write his own checks, as if he couldn't before. But it's now even more apparent where he stands in terms of dudes, like in the dudes hierarchy of F1, and we're talking about now historically speaking, he's there. Like, it was so cool to watch, because this is the year where he genuinely had to try. After like race 7, it was a real dogfight. Once, actually, it was post Miami. Like once McLaren came through with their upgrades, then Red Bull really found themselves in trouble, both internally and externally. And, I don't want to say, hey, Max overcame the dysfunction of his own team. He was in the middle of it. He was a part of it. But with as many distractions and as much actual technical challenge as he got this year, it is an astonishing performance. It is. I don't know in my lifetime, like, and I am old, but like I have seen a guy drive that well before, like that, and in a manner that's like really entertaining. Like, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but if you watch Michael Schumacher, precision, surgical attention to detail, God help me, boring. Michael Schumacher could at times be a very boring driver. I will say that Max, when he is pressed, is not only technically perfect, he's also kind of dangerous. I think we've seen that when he's had to, like in Brazil, when he has to drive like a madman, it's not just that he does it, it's like he enjoys it, like really enjoys that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting season, because the year literally started with like this horrible Red Bull scandal and Max's dad calling for the team principal to resign. And like you said,
who's still there.
He's still there. There was all this sort of controversy and drama, and then it looked like, early on in the season, like the car is so good that it doesn't matter. They're just going to do what they did last year. And then of course McLaren and Ferrari present a pretty real challenge a few races in, and Max had to sort of earn it, and he did. Like you said, like the way that he wins is so, like, it's so remarkable, because there's not a lot to remark about. He is so automatic in like those high pressure situations, and we've seen other drivers not be able to rise to that occasion on numerous times. I think it is sort of a bummer that there was so much to do about the the race stewarding in certain races this year, because it was a bummer to see a lot of races end with that sort of controversy and have Max sort of attached to it. And it is his style, and it is what he's been doing for a long time, and he is going to keep getting away with it it but even in spite of that, like he's just a super dominant electric driver, and so like so good at doing just the little things and so good under pressure.
Do you think this? Now I have a question for you. Did you see his comments after the race?
I did not. Tell me.
Okay. So in those comments, he was talking about how much this not only meant to him, but he began to talk about his family. Max is 27, and he has been in Formula One, I believe, since he was 17. His first car was a Formula One car. If you want to know like how lab built and custom fit Max Verstappen is for this sport, his entire life, since he was 4, by his own account, this is also in the comments saying, I've been doing this since I was 4. He's 27, so he's been doing this for, damn near a quarter century. And he was talking about how much this meant to his family, and talking about how much they had sacrificed for him. And I was gonna ask you if you'd seen them. Do you think this is a turn for him personally? This is a personality-driven sport, and that is both a pun and literally true. Like, this is a sport where Drive to Survive, everyone falls in love with personality. Daniel Ricciardo was not the best driver on the grid, but he was available and charming, and that really made Drive to Survive the first couple of seasons click, because we got a lot of Daniel Ricciardo, who was fun. Max Verstappen was a little more inscrutable, but it's really wild to me to see not only how sane he is given his kind of very abnormal upbringing. And I just say that if you are raised to be a Formula One driver, there are very few people on the planet who even make that job, much less are raised to do it. Yeah. And with a father who is demanding, and I think that's being charitable, and but he was talking about how much he owed to his family, and he goes, yeah, so, I live with my dad, and, then he was gone a lot, and, we really worked for this, and this was, this may have ended my parents' marriage, basically talking about the but going through it very, very calmly. And he said, emotionally, you don't see what's happening here. I'm not very outwardly emotional, but I owe it to my family. And I thought, that feels like a switch in perspective. That feels like now, after 4 titles, everything here can be for everyone else. Like, Max has pretty much maxed out the personal ego gratification side of this. Now, I hope, and he has other interests, and he has bigger ambitions or outside ambitions, and I hope he gets to pursue those, because 4 titles and everything that his life has been so far, it's not just that he can't, ask anything else of the sport, and it's just extra from here. The sport can't ask anything else from him. I think you got a glimpse post-race of how much this has taken out of him, how much he's had to give to it, and yet there still feels like there's a person there, and that's extraordinary to me. We don't often see a driver, the driver's personality sort of change, develop, or reveal itself to be something deeper than you thought in front of your eyes, and that's the cool thing you get out of this particular championship with Max. I might be reading too much into it, but it was cool to watch. It
feels like a bit of a crescendo. It doesn't feel like last year or the year before for him. This feels like a real achievement in a lot of ways. And it feels like there's still so much meat on that bone. He could keep going as long as he wants to, if he wants to. That's, I think, sort of the other interesting question is what is motivating you at this point if you're one of the most successful 27-year-olds in the world. His cats, his sim racing, he should get to sim race as late as he wants, forever, for the rest of his time at F1. It doesn't matter if it's the night before a race. I'm sorry, you do not get to decide when Max turns his sim racing off anymore. He won the championship this year. It's over.
He's the only guy I would let sim race while actually racing. If he just had 2 wheels and he's just got 2 hands. I have some faith that he could probably do well in both.
Yeah.
Because he's that devoted to racing. One of the things he wants to do, reportedly, is do the classics, do the endurance, do endurance racing. So we now have this sort of, alternate universe where maybe the post-30 Max is out there at Le Mans and doing endurance racing, or heaven knows what else. Let's see him at Dakar. Let's see Max drive a giant turbo van across desert sand dunes. Would love to see that, because very few people do it for the love of the game, and I suspect he's one of one in that respect.
Before we hang it up for the weekend, we'll be back next week with another episode, I believe. Ferrari, some drama. I didn't see this one coming. I've been reposting all the Carlos and Charles videos that their social team puts out at Ferrari for the last year. They've been doing Ratatouille stuff. They've been doing
adorable
drawing a Ferrari logo without picking up a pen.
Yep.
It's a lot of good stuff, Spencer. And I've been lamenting how sad I was to see this duo split up at the end of the season when Lewis Hamilton takes over there and Carlos Sainz goes to Williams. But, it turns out that there may have been some faking it in those videos. They maybe don't like each other that much. What do you make of this?
I certainly don't think Charles is happy with their relationship on the track in the last couple of races. Here we go. This is from Charles Leclerc. Bozy, pick up, please. Leclerc. Yes, whatever you want, as always. Bosey. Charles, you did your job. Okay, thank you. Leclerc. Yeah, I did my job, but being nice fucks me over all the fucking time. All the fucking time. It's not even being nice. It's just being respectful. Charles. I know I need to shut up, but at one point it's always the same. So, oh my fucking God. Bosey. Okay, but anyway, you did the right thing for the team, and pick up, please. Charles. Yeah. Fucking pick up what the fuck we want. Shit. And the radio is on. I'm sorry. That was on me. And my bad for the first stint. I was shit driving as well.
All right, your accent's better than mine ever would be, but yeah, that was wow, quite a spicy meatball. All the F-bombs after he's been warned not to F-bomb, and the maybe try in Spanish.
Maybe try in Spanish when Carlos was ignoring orders. Yeah.
And then Carlos afterwards in the media scrum said that he agreed not to talk to the media because we always talk here. We always make a mess. I agreed with him not to say anything to the media. It's stuff between me and him. I never open the radio. I never talk to the media because I don't like it. It's not a nice thing to do. It's not necessary. So Carlos was like, we agreed we're not going to do this thing out in the open. And Charles was like, it's too late. And this is not respectful to me. So
that's good.
Yes, it was Charles has a difficult accent because it's French, but it's also like slightly Italian.
It's a little Italian, yeah. It's a little rounded off, yeah.
Whereas Carlos just has the deepest voice, the deepest, most
Carlos, yeah.
Deepest,
Carlos has that whole world's most interesting man vibe going on, right?
Oh man,
hello,
yeah.
Carlos.
Yeah,
and
but yeah, I don't know. Do you get the sense that this is not a Charles Carlos thing, but this is a Charles Ferrari thing?
I think it is a Charles Ferrari thing, and that I can just say that confidently because Carlos is gone. So, and he's still this mad about it because he's not quite out of it. And I think it's also a looking forward thing because he knows that it's not a mystery that the guy he's going to be paired with next
Lewis
year.
Coming.
Yeah. Has he had any serious issues with teammates before?
Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah,
none that I can
happened?
think of. None that I can think of.
No psyche-shattering, relationship-destroying issues that he had with somebody he's known for most of his life, and that became like so common that it's basically a trope among F1 fans to discuss the broken relationship between these two, like they're the fox and the hound, right? Like, did that happen? It's already happened.
That didn't happen. I thought at first you meant Charles, and I was like, actually, I can't think of anything off the top. Has Charles ever had a teammate issue?
He's about to. Yeah. Evidently he has one right now.
You know, he might have that I can't think of, but yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. But worth noting, both Ferrari drivers still within striking distance of finishing higher in the drivers' championship standings. So a lot of points on the line for them. But Carlos, I mean, I see both sides. Like Carlos doesn't have to he doesn't have to play nice. He got sacked.
He shouldn't. He got, like, we talked about this in the paddock for a bit, and I want everyone to just consider it, okay? Before we all get on like Team Charles, which I love both of these drivers. I think you love both of these drivers, right?
For sure.
Let's review Carlos's mad year. Got his first win. Had an appendicitis. Had the appendicitis before he got that first win in Australia. All right. Got another win. Had a fantastic year. Got canned by the team so they could go get Lewis. Still drove his ass off. Right. It just had an insane year career-wise where he's lucky to still have a seat despite having, what other drivers would consider a career year.
He dated like 7 F1 teams at once to try to get his new seat. Like he really he was really out there just trying to court whoever he could for that seat.
For like 9 months.
For months.
It felt like. I know it wasn't 9
February.
months. It felt like a pregnancy, right? Like Carlos was due with a new seat, and it took that long for us to figure out whether it was a boy or a girl.
He kept peeing, and it was no one could figure out why.
Yeah, just the strip just wouldn't talk back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a weird year for him for sure. And I see Charles' side of it too. Like you're still on a team, you got to play by the team rules, and hopefully, like, neither puts each other in danger, and that could happen if you're on different pages with someone who's right behind you in a very fast car. I see both sides. I don't want to take a side. They're both my friends, and I'm going to miss them doing silly things together on Instagram Reels.
I will. Speaking of silly things, we do have the most important thing to happen in this race. I think we have this clip, Doug, if you would like to show it, which is Yuki Tsunoda establishing dominance, demonstrating greatness, being the change he wants to see in the world by destroying a sign in the pits, pulling out of the pits and annihilating it. And when he was asked about it, what did he say, Jessica?
He said, "I shit my pants."
You had one of the most unexpected moments of the race when you got a bit of airtime in the in the pit lane. What happened there?
Oh,
it was a polystyrene block and off you went.
Shit my pants. It's like, I don't know. Apologies. I mean, like, especially, when you smash the board and the car's on the air, you just do that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I nearly go to the wall. So, that was the moment I really,
Brown flag at pit exit.
Exactly.
Yes, okay.
I love that.
We'll move on from that.
Do we know if he means literally or metaphorically?
When you said he made a change, I thought you were going to say he changed his underpants.
His drawers?
Yes. No, we don't know that. And no one would ever find out because the weed smell was so overpowering that no one would know.
This is another paddock conversation that was had multiple times, which was, why isn't Yuki going to get that second slot at Red Bull? Because Checo's done. Like, it just feels like that was the general vibe there, was, especially among the Mexican press, was this was the last chance that we have to see him in North America, because he won't have a seat next year. He won't be in F1. And that's sad. But on the flip side of that is that there's an empty seat. And the general vibe is that Christian Horner wants Liam Lawson in that seat, because Liam Lawson, in his mind, fits the sort of stability and lack of volatility that they want in a true number 2 driver. And he doesn't see that in Yuki. And my counter is, Yuki drives the ass off of anything he sits in and has been incredibly consistent this year and mature. And Christian Horner's just not feeling it, because, I don't know. It's my professional opinion. Christian Horner sucks if he doesn't see that about Yuki. Yuki rules.
My professional opinion about Christian Horner is redacted.
How long do you have?
There's a lot of F1 news and things happening in the world. We'll get to that next week, but this has been a fun. Yeah,
GM, hey,
what the hell happened there? That's exciting.
I hopefully, now that they got Andretti out of the picture, that was what got them approved. They're in, and now they'll just hire Andretti. This is what I'm waiting to happen. I'm waiting for him to do the Mo meme, right? Gets thrown out of the bar, appears back in frame.
Then he's all right, well, we'll discuss more next week when we're back. But Spencer, I'm glad you had a fun time in Vegas. Looked like quite a time.
It was delightful. It easily, I think, probably in terms of just overall, arbitrary ranking off the top of the dome, that's like a top 5 race already.
Wow. Oh, good stuff. And I heard you made some winnings on the blackjack table.
I came up, I made $1. I
that's
made $1.
Awesome. That's great. That's a winning weekend.
It was $3, but I tipped someone, so $1.
Awesome. All right. See you next week. Like, subscribe, rate, review. Tell your friends. This is DNF.